Hello, this is a quick video on URL actions. One of the actions that is available to be created is hyperlinks to be able to go to different pages. And so if we just step into it, the list view actions is where we want to go. And I have created a little list view here called is hyperlink. So if we select those, you'll see that I have three here. We'll focus on the middle one first, just going to an app based on a given URL. So if we click into this particular hyperlink action, you'll see there that it has a label. The Apex class name is very specific. It needs to be list view action null. What we've done here is we've just selected the record visibility to be always available, always displayed. So on any list view, it'll be displayed. And then, of course, is hyperlink. This is very important. It sets it to make sure that it actually knows that it is a hyperlink. The only other piece here that needs to be understood is that the actual URL itself is stored as an action parameter. So after you've created the action, you'd come in and create the parameter exactly as it is here. And you can see here the label URL, API name URL, and then the default value is what actually holds the URL itself. Now in this particular case, it's not going to be dynamic or anything. This is just a straight URL. And so if we were to go to an example and we were to select any list view, and we go to the actions, you'll see here, go to a cool app is available. And it is a core URL. So if we click on that, it'll take us to what is hopefully the coolest app on the App Exchange. So there it is, Simpli list views. So that's great. That's the first one. One of the other things that you'll notice here is that this particular URL action, the record type is core, right? So actions always, if it's for a core list view, you need to create an action which has a record type core. And then if you have a manual one, a manual list view, then you need to create another action for the manual. So you can see here I've created another hyperlink. Now, that's all great, well and good. It gets a little more complicated because we do have the option of making dynamic hyperlinks. So if we go into the dynamic hyperlink itself, it's not that different. You'll see here that I have selected a particular object, and that's probably important because the hyperlink might be specific to an object. It might not be, it doesn't have to be, but in this particular case, I've decided to only make the action URL, action hyperlink available on the list views. I've also made it so that it's only displayed, the action's only displayed if one record is selected. And this is important because we're going to be passing across one ID. Okay, you can have it pass across more, it's not a problem. But in this particular case, we're only passing along one. And then from an action parameters perspective, there are two now that have to be created. The first one is the URL itself. So if we go and we have a look at the URL, you'll see here it's not that different to the other one, except in this particular case, what you'll notice is that there is a parameter that we can set. And in this particular case, record ID can be set. And you'll notice that it's surrounded by $signs. This allows me to identify that it is a parameter and that the parameter needs to be set based on the other parameter that you will have created. So if we go to the other parameter, and you'll remember that the parameter name was record ID. So if we click on the other parameter, you'll see that the API name is record ID. Okay, and so what's going to happen here is that it's going to take the details from this parameter and use it to find the value and then store it in and put it into the URL at that particular position. And the field that it's going to get from the record is set in the default value. So you can see here that it's ID. So in this particular case, what it's going to do is it's going to take the ID of the list view record, it's going to stick it into the URL, and then it's going to call the URL. Now this URL, as you noticed, was an internal URL. It's fine. It's not a problem to set an internal URL. So you can see here, if we go back to the URL itself, there it is. It's an internal URL, and there's the record ID. So we could create another parameter, and we could, add more information on if we wanted to, and that information would get passed through. So you can have multiple parameters inside of a URL. So if we go and we test this now, we need to go to the list view object, and we just need to select any list view. And then once we've got that list view, if we look, the URL, the hyperlink is not available, but as soon as we select a value and we go down, we should see it. There it is, dynamic hyperlink. So what's going to happen here is it should take us to this particular list view's record page. Now, of course, typically we wouldn't need to do that because we'd be able to just click on the name, but this, as an example, it's good. So if we click on dynamic hyperlink, there it is, takes you to the record. So that's how we create action hyperlinks using just a standard simple URL if you want to go to a particular website, and then of course if you want to make it more dynamic and add information in based on record selected.